Hey guys, how's everyone doing today? Just go ahead and confirm that you can hear me. All right, awesome. Hope you guys are having a great Friday night or Saturday morning, wherever you're at. I really appreciate all y'all coming. Again, the stream was a little bit different time because I'm going to be in Dubai for Token 2049 next week. So I won't be able to do the streams, the daily schedule. So expect, probably gonna have a stream tomorrow too for the market overview, but we'll cover that bridge when we cross it. But again, thanks everyone. It's gonna be a great stream today, so definitely stay tuned. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So this is the fourth video for Foundations of Technical Analysis. Now, for this video, we're going to, well, one, we've already gone over how to draw support and resistance lines. We went over the different time frames, charting patterns, indicators, candlestick patterns, etc. So we've gone over a lot so far. And this video is going to be about trend lines and trend confirmations. And so this is very important because, again, while support and resistance level is the foundation of technical analysis, trend lines are almost as important. And we'll go over a lot of examples with Bitcoin and a few others, but trend lines are good. So if you can master them, as well as trend indicators, moving averages, and even Fibonacci to predict how much a token is going to retrace, then you can actually master TA even more and help predict moves that 95% of people miss. So let's go ahead and get started. And if you have any questions during this time, go ahead and leave them in the comments and I will answer them along the way. So first, using trend lines to identify trends. So that's exactly what they are, is you have a downtrend line, which I'm sure everyone here has seen, but price is making a lower high. So it's in a downtrend, and even it can make a lower low, which we'll talk about that as well. That's almost like channels, like a downward channel that we would call that. Then you have an uptrend line. So price is making higher lows. So again, that's in an uptrend. And now you can see that this uptrend happens whenever this trend line is broken and retested as support. So after that, we also have what's called sideways trends. Now, sideways trends can be very good. Again, this kind of gets into the territory of using support and resistance levels and using the bounce strategy where you're buying at support and selling at resistance. But you could even call it a trend as well, or just a channel, you know, whatever you want to call it, but it is still some type of trend. And so that's also another thing that you can do. But we're going to talk about all these again on the Bitcoin chart, and I'll go in depth about each of them. Also, we have moving averages and using them for trend confirmation. So moving averages are very, very important because they can help determine if you're in a downtrend or if you're in an uptrend, and if you should be buying at support or selling at resistance. And so, for example, you can use crossovers and also use them as dynamic support and resistance. So, for example, the crossover, like if the 10-day crosses below the 50-day, you know, could that be a downtrend, or vice versa? Or really, more significantly, is if the 50-day is actually crossing below the 200-day, which is known as a death cross, or if it crosses above the 200-day, which is also known as a golden cross. And so if you can master those, I don't like to use those as much because they're a little bit lagging. And so the move could already happen by the time the cross is starting because everyone's looking at it. But nonetheless, that is something you can factor in, as well as using them for support and resistance. So you can see how whenever you cross above, let's just say the 10-day moving average, which again, 10 is very, very short and should only be used for like intraday trading, not for long-term determining if we're in a uptrend or downtrend. But nonetheless, you can see it's acted as support. And then same, when price gets below it, it acts as resistance, a shift in the trend. And then you also have the 200-day, which is going to be your long-term moving averages. So you can see price bouncing above on the 200-day. So you can use these long-term moving averages like the 200-day to determine if we're in an uptrend or in a downtrend. That way, if we're in an uptrend above the 200 EMA, then you can start buying at support for like horizontal support. Or if we're below it, then you can look at shorting at resistance. So that's another way you can analyze. And then finally, Fibonacci. So the Fibonacci retracement tool is one of the most important indicators you can use in addition to the RSI, stock RSI, moving averages, and the MACD. Okay, the Fibonacci should be your number 4 or 5 indicator that you should use for confluence in helping determine how far a price is going to retrace once it's reached a local top or how much it's going to bounce once it's reached a local bottom. And we'll talk about how to find those and show them on the Bitcoin chart as well. But you can see this is very good because, for example, say you crossed above a 200 moving average and now you're just in this uptrend. You're buying at support, and then finally you have the first big rejection. Okay, so at that point, when you have the first big rejection, well, you can draw your Fibonacci retracement tool from the bottom where the move happened. Okay, you look for inflection points. That's going to be where you start your Fibonacci tool. So you look for that inflection point where it started the run, and then you look for the local top. You drag it up to there, and then you can see, okay, most tokens will retrace between the 0.5 and the 618 level. Okay, so the 618, you also have a 0.65, which is also known as the golden pocket between those two areas. But nonetheless, usually price retraces to at least the 0.5 to the 0.618. And so you can see on this chart, it retraced to it perfectly. Now, it kind of, it had a little confluence with some support here where it wicked down. But nonetheless, this was a big, important level. So if you had some DCA orders layered, you would have caught that long and then continued higher. And so that's why the Fibonacci retracement tool is so important, because everyone in TradFi uses it. Like the golden ratio, it's built into a lot of algorithms because historically it's based off emotion. It's based off of the standard retracement, people taking profits after big moves. And so it's a calculation that stood the test of time. And I'm sure you've seen like a seashell, like the pattern like a seashell that's drawn, and you have that kind of swirl. Well, that's also known as like the golden ratio, the Fibonacci ratio. And so it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's math. It's everywhere in the universe. And so that's why it's so important. And that's why price has respected these levels so much, specifically 0.5 to 0.618. Now, with that said, let's go ahead and go over to the charts. All right. So, originally, I was going to use this BloFin chart here because, again, you can chart on BloFin, which I recommend everyone does. So much easier, especially if you're already trading on here. Links in the description if you haven't joined BloFin. You'll definitely get some bonus when you join via the Gym Hunters link. But with that said, I'm going to use the trading view chart because I don't want to mess up this chart. But definitely you can use it on BloFin. It's much easier as well. So let's go ahead and look at one of the Bitcoin charts, okay? So let's go ahead and look at this here. So I drew a lot of trend lines before, but I'm going to delete everything here so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So let's go ahead and first go over trend lines. So for trend lines, I like to draw them on the daily charts or higher because, as we mentioned in our first video for support and resistance levels, the higher the time frame, the more significant that level is going to be. Meaning, if you draw a support and resistance level on the daily time frame, well, this is 24 hours worth of data. Each candle encapsulates 24 hours worth of data. So if you find price bouncing off of a level, well, that's going to be more significant. Just like if you have price rejecting off a big level when we had a local top, well, that's going to be very significant as well when it comes up to it again. So that's why at a minimum, I like to use the daily. Now, if you remember in market updates, I was talking about this downtrend line. Remember, whenever Bitcoin had this downtrend line here, and I said, guys, if Bitcoin can cross above this, we could see a shift in the trend. Okay, that was the word that I used. And I used it specifically because this is a trend line resistance. You're making lower highs. And so if you're making lower highs and it's constantly rejected off of this level, well, when it breaks above it and it can close above it, at that point, and you can see it bounces off of it, at that point, you started a new trend. And so if you're on the daily time frame or higher, you know that this trend line is very significant. So a break of it would be a significant move. And it would be a shift in the trend, most likely, if it can hold above it for a few candles. Now, on the same token, you can look at your indicators as well to determine if you want to buy here or not. But at the bare minimum, just breaking this trend level, and you would look at how many touches it has as far as establishing trend lines. So if you can see here, it rejected off it a couple times, and this time, then by this rejection here, you would see this trend line is established. And then when it came up to it again, it rejected, what, 3, 4, 5 times? Rejected one more time, 6th time? And then finally, when it broke above it, that was the confirmation for a move higher. And so that's why it's important to watch that. Now, on that same token, you can see if we scroll back here, if we draw this trend line, and remember, they're at inflection points, okay? So if they're at inflection points, then what you can see here is when you have this trend line resistance where price has rejected, okay? So it's rejected once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. Now look what happens. When it breaks above it, it actually acts as support. So this is what you want to look for. You want to look for trend line resistance, breaking above and acting as support. It's very, very important. Now, a couple other things. You would say, well, Data, how am I going to know when to buy at support? How am I going to know this is going to hold? And at that point, I would say, well, what are your indicators saying? What's your RSI saying? What's your stock RSI saying? At this point, right, where was the stock RSI? Okay, at this point, stock RSI was getting very close to being oversold. Okay, so the stock RSI was close to being oversold. Well, now you know more times than not, this is probably going to bounce here. And at that point, it did. And so using your other indicators is going to help you with determining if something's going to bounce or if it's a good value. Because remember, you want to buy when others are fearful and sell when they're greedy, as Warren Buffett says. So that's a very important tool. Now, not only were we making higher or lower highs, we were also making lower lows. So if you draw where the lowest move happened, so for example, if you were to draw on like right here, so when this move started happening, at that point, you could say, well, this was the low where we started reversing, and then now you can start connecting the dots here. And you could say, okay, price bounced off it here, so this is an established trend line, so now I'm looking for it to bounce again. And also, if you want to take this a step further, you could actually go onto the parallel channel tool, and you could use that to, okay, connect your lines on top, drag it down, and then connect your lines on the bottom, right? And so you can see this is a parallel channel, very, very strong. Yes, it wicked below, but where did the daily candle close? Okay, it was right on that trend line, and then now it still acted as support. So that's also another thing where I determine channels. They can be downward channels, uptrend channels, etc. But you can see how they can come into play and how you can actually connect these lines, which I'll talk about a weekly chart where we actually predicted the breakout and bounce from 53K. So that's actually a really, really good one. And also, if you have other trend lines that you can look at as well. So for example, if you have this one here, so remember we had this one marked a local high. So you want to look for inflection points, right? If it's like a local high, local low, you can use that to start your trend line and then start connecting the dots. And so it's rejected multiple times. Okay, this is probably an established trend line and it had a huge drop. This is definitely an established trend line. Now, next time it comes up to it, okay, I'm shorting at 27.3K. It went down to 26.17. Not a huge move, but still, that's at least a 5% move. And then from there, once it broke it, look what happened. It broke this trend line to the upside and it retested it as support. That's what you want to look for. Trend line resistance, breaking, retesting as support, and then it continued higher. And so again, right? What were your indicators saying? Well, it broke above it, and then look at this. Okay, stock RSI was crossing to the upside, and then it came back down, but stock RSI was oversold, and then it reversed right there. Okay, so you were above this trend line, so technically you started a new trend, and while it's not as established as I would like, still you started a new trend. And also if you look at your horizontal support and resistance levels, it's still above this major support. So again, it is still in a healthy uptrend. You could say this was the reversal candle here, where it bounced off of 25K in hindsight. But if you would have been looking, well, look at this. Previous resistance, now turn support, now turn support, now turn support. right? So you have everything there. You have all of the indications of price wanting to go higher, and when it breaks this trend line, which marked that local top at 31K, then it finally does. So again, I know it's a lot of information, but that's just why it's so significant when you're drawing these different trend lines. So with that said, let's see if anyone has any questions. Okay, nope. Perfect. Okay, so now let's go over one more where I want to talk about on the weekly, where actually, no, sorry, let's go over some moving averages, and then I'll go over the other trend line because it actually incorporates very well into that. So for example, let's go into the 50-week moving average, which has been a big moving average for us, especially for those who have kept in touch with my market updates. So here, okay, I'm gonna delete a few things here. Okay, so remember my market updates when I was posting this 50 EMA, right? I said Bitcoin's at 50 EMA. It's a very big inflection point because look how many times it bounced off the 50 EMA. And that's what you want to look at. When you're looking at moving averages, remember, they can act as support and resistance as well. So bounce once, twice, another time back here. It acted as resistance down here in February of 2023. And now it even bounced over here on March of 2025. So you're looking at these major inflection points where Bitcoin has bounced on the EMA. And so this EMA is established as significant because how many times Bitcoin's bounced, it's its own trend line in a sense. And so whenever we were down here at 78K and everyone was calling for lower, they were calling for at a minimum, 71.5K, or they were calling even for 54K, right? Well, if you would have been looking at this EMA, you would have said, okay, I know we can go lower, but where does the weekly close? Where's the weekly candle closing? And the weekly candle did not close below 77.8K where this 50 EMA was at. Because if it would have, then similar to what happened here, it would have gone lower. It closed below this. Here, let's go ahead and draw it here. Closed below, went lower. Closed below, went lower. Here, it closed below, yet the very next candle it crossed above, which is very bullish, and it went much higher. Very bullish. Whenever you have a move that reverses immediately. So all that to say is moving averages can be extremely significant. And so don't count them out just because maybe a certain moving average doesn't match up or doesn't act as support and resistance. Some of the most important moving averages are the 50 EMA and the 200 EMA. Very important moving averages because those are going to determine your long, 50 EMA is your intermediate term. So think 1 to 3 months, whereas the 200 day is going to be like your 3 to 6 months plus. So for example, whenever we crossed above this 200 EMA, you can see here, it doesn't show all the way. I can actually go to the BLX chart. It's a little bit busy here, but you can see here, the 200 EMA, which is this pink line, purple line, how many times we bounced after crossing above it and it acted as resistance. Okay, we bounced, and then Bitcoin went higher. So all that to say is whenever you have the weekly and you have the weekly 200 EMA or the weekly 50 EMA, and they are actually significant, meaning price is respecting their levels, then make sure that when it crosses above or below, at that point, start looking for longs or shorts, depending, right? If it crosses above, look for longs. If it crosses below, look for shorts. And so that's why it's very imperative that you guys have at least two big moving averages, the 50 and 200 day, so you can know what price is respecting and what levels you need to be looking at. If it gets close to those, i.e., 77.8K with the 50 EMA on the weekly. So that's another thing. Now, how does this tie in to what I was talking about where I said I identified a channel and I longed at 53K before we had the big breakout? Well, let's go ahead and take away these EMAs real quick. Take away these candles or these indicators here and take away this. Okay, so if you go to my X account, the crypto data, I actually posted, and I can pull it up too if you want, but I actually posted this channel that we had. We were in a parallel channel. This was back in March, okay? We were in, and I'll actually show you what I was looking at. I'll do the replay function and show you exactly what I was looking at. So let me actually do one more so you can see. Okay, let's go here. Okay, so this is how the chart looked, right? If you didn't have anything drawn, this would look like, okay, well, we went up for a while and now we're probably going to keep going down. Because really, there's no major support. The next one is probably going to be around 51K, etc. Well, what I was looking at this point is I had a parallel channel, and what I had was drawn here and then drawn down here. Okay, so I had it drawn like this, and this was on the weekly. And also, if you guys remember from our chart pattern video, what does this look like? Okay, I don't have to draw it too far, but can anyone in the comments tell me what pattern this is? If we have big move up and then kind of a little downward channel here. What does this look like? Anyone? And does anyone know the pattern? I'll give it a couple seconds if anyone else knows it. So this pattern is actually a bull flag. Okay? Because what does a flag look like? Well, you have the pole, and then you have the flag. Does that look like this? Yeah, Azar got it. And so that's perfect because, again, this is a standard bull flag pattern. You literally have the move to the upside, and then you have the cross to the downside. Okay? Literally a bull flag pattern. So that was one area of confluence that I was looking at. I was looking at that. And then I said, well, what's a second area of confluence? Well, price is actually coming down to this trend line support. Okay? So we had trend line support. We had this bull flag pattern. And at this time, look when this was. Okay? This was around September. So I don't know if BlackRock actually started talking about the ETF at this time, if it was in October. But nonetheless, there was a lot of fear. Okay? There's a lot of fear. A lot of people were uncertain. But we had this bull flag pattern. We had this trend line support, and on top of that, look what else we had. You look at your EMAs. Look where we were at. On the 50 EMA, we were right at support. And so I was looking at this, and I was saying, well, on the 50 EMA, we're right at support. It's respected itself in the past. And we're at trend line support. This is a bull flag. I'm like, man, this could be a good area to long here. And I literally posted that. You know, I was like, 3 areas of confluence, good area to long. And if we actually look, what else do we have? Well, the stock RSI was overbought as well, or oversold, sorry. It was oversold. And so you had the stock RSI oversold, you had trend line at support, we're at the support of the 50 EMA, and you were in a bull flag pattern. All of those, so 4 areas of confluence. And so at that point, I chose to long, and you can look at my X account. I posted about it too. Let me actually pull it up, just so you guys believe me. So, because you may think I'm just BSing right now. So we'll go ahead and pull it up. And you can clearly see. Okay. So, again, if you're not following me at the Crypto Data, that's where I post a lot of good info. But let's just look for where I posted about. Here, let's go. Let's do actually. Okay, let's see if I can do 53K. Okay, look at this. September 7th, 2024. Clear example. So far, 53K is held on Bitcoin. It had 3 areas of confluence, the weekly trend line, 50 EMA, and downward trend line support. We also have a descending wedge forming on the weekly RSI. I'm still expecting a bounce to at least 58.2K, if not higher. If we break support, it won't be good. And I mean, this was September. You can clearly see I was posting about this, and we had this long-term trend line here, which I even drew here. And so with RSI being, so here's the thing, guys, is if you're prepared, if you're looking at these patterns and you're ready, then that's all you need. And then at the end of the day, you actually, 9 times out of 10, the moves actually end up playing out. And so most people weren't looking at all of this. But that's why I was confident when everyone was calling for lower. And so that's why it pays to be prepared and to also look at all of your patterns. And again, repetition is going to help you recognize them faster than most. But again, so anyway, I was looking at all that, and then the rest is history, and basically go 10x speed. And then we see Bitcoin Again, it was bouncing around, finally hit it. Now, at this point, here's what I was thinking. I was like, okay, we broke above this bull flag on the weekly, which is very significant. Now, are we going to bounce off this trend line support? Because remember, when you have trend line resistance, bouncing off trend line support, that confirms the breakout, and now you're in a new trend. So at this point, I'm like, well, 66.4K has got to hold. We got to close the weekly above it. And look what happened. Boom. It held. We closed the weekly above it. Now we're going higher. And then the rest is history. That's how easy it is. Again, I know it seems like a lot, but really, if you go over everything, then you're able to catch these patterns. And now, one more thing I want to add on is, well, hey man, how do we know that where price is going to reject at after it crosses above? Well, if you're prepared, and for example, if you're looking at, let's go to the BLX chart. So if we go to the BLX chart, which is the Bitcoin Liquid Index, and we look at this trend line resistance. So if we actually, and I'll actually draw it for you guys, so it's a little bit easier to see. But if you draw that trend line from the top in 2017, and you actually drag it all the way down, look at this. You have this trend line, okay? So now it's established. You could say by the second or third resistance rejection in March of 2021, it's established. Now look at every single high that was made after that. It rejected, it wicked above. October 2021, November 2021. Look where we came to this time around. It literally rejected off 105K, off 106K. So this isn't just some type of magic line hocus pocus. This actually plays out. There's algorithms at play. There's everyone that's looking at these major levels. At least all the top traders are. And so while everyone is euphoric at these levels here, 106K, it's like, whoa guys, let's take a chill pill. We haven't crossed above this major trend line resistance. We're probably going to go back down. And that's exactly what happens. Now, if we extrapolate this out and we say, okay, this is a 4-year cycle, we're probably going to top out October, November of this year. Where does that place Bitcoin if we look at this trend line? Well, it places it at around 160K. Or 116, sorry, not 160. But I have seen predictions for 115 all the way up to 150. I would be comfortable saying Bitcoin's probably going to top out around there. So anywhere between 115 all the way up here at about 150. And we can actually go over why that is, but I think we're going to top out somewhere around here, probably October, November. But that's how, you know, all of these different things can help you define targets. And so that's why it pays to actually be prepared and know where price is going to go and where it's going to reject from. So very, very useful. All right, let's go back to the other Bitcoin chart we're at. All right, so we've covered moving averages, we've covered the trend lines. Now let's cover Fibonacci's. So, and one last thing actually, before I go over Fibonacci, I just want to show you guys a moving average that has been the most significant I've ever seen on a token. And it's actually on SUI. So anyone who knows SUI has been pumping like crazy. It's been doing amazing. But just look at this 50 EMA. If you pull up the 50 EMA on the daily, so if you want to pull it up, go to indicators, type in EMA, moving average exponential, it's there. If you're on BloFin, just go to your little indicator signal in the top left, next to the daily time frame, type in EMA, you can add it. Very simple. But you add the 50-day EMA on the weekly, on the daily. Look at this. SUI bounced in October of 2024, bounced again in November, bounced again in December, bounced again in January, bounced again in end of January, rejected in February, rejected again in March, and then when it crossed above it, it just sent. Because this was a shift, because this EMA, this moving average, has been established and has been marked as significant because how many times it was respected. If a moving average is respected multiple times, i.e. acts as support or resistance multiple times, that is a significant moving average, and you should be paying attention anytime price gets close to it, or if price crosses above or below it. In this case, SUI actually crossed above. And so it closed above it on the daily, so this was huge. Now, if you would have longed at 266, at that point, I mean, it wicked up to 382, you would have been making 43%. If you're on 5x leverage, it's over 200% in 4 days. And so, guys, that's why this is how you can actually take this and translate it into tangible results. This is how you can make a lot of money in crypto. People don't realize this. People think this is all hocus pocus. The charts just move without no rhyme or reason. Guys, this is the data here. Like, you literally can't ignore the data. That's why my name is Crypto Data. Because I look at the data, I take out emotions out of the equation. And instead, I put moving averages and indicators into the equation because they have stood the test of time and they have proven significant. And so you have to be able to do that if you want to be successful in trading. 95% of people don't do this. They aren't this analytical, and that's why they lose money. That's why they blow up their account. That's why they don't know where the price is going. That's why they're shocked whenever we top out at 109K, even though you had a moving average or a trend line resistance from 2017 showing you that was going to reject. I mean, guys, if you just, I know it's a lot, and I'm not trying to saturate you with information, but at the end of the day, if you don't want to put in the work, you're not going to be successful. And just like Luke says, you know, you have to be willing to put in the work, and your input is going to dictate your output. So if you put in an hour or two a day, well, you're going to get an hour or two a day's worth of results. If you put in 4 to 8 hours a day, every day, you're going to get 4 to 8 hours of results, which is going to translate into much higher profits and much more success. So it just depends how much. I know some of you have full-time jobs, you're in school, part-time jobs, etc. It doesn't have to be a lot. Just be consistent, okay? 1 to 2 hours a day is fine, but if you're consistent over weeks, months, years, you are going to catch up to those people that aren't putting in as much time as you are. That's why consistency is key, and consistency compounds. So make sure you guys are focusing on being consistent, because then you will be able to spot these trends, spot these tells that most people are ignoring. Okay, let's see. And then lastly, we're going to cover Fibonacci's, and then I'm going to go to the questions. So I'm not ignoring you guys. I see you guys' comments. I will go back to them after we cover Fibonacci. So let's go back to the Bitcoin charts. And let's cover Fibonacci. So the Fibonacci retracement tool is one of the most powerful tools you can use. And again, it's because it's based off human emotion and based off of certain algorithms and universal law, different calculations that have stood the test of time, that a token usually retraces a certain percentage, usually between 50 to 61.8%, after it's made a big move to the upside or downside. And so let's go ahead and cover, for example, on the, let's see if we can go right here. Okay, so let's see if we can go on the weekly time frame. So again, the higher the time frame, the more significant those levels are going to be. So where do we start the Fibonacci? Well, if we're looking for a retracement to the downside, and let me go ahead and use the replay tool here. Okay, right here. Okay, so let me show you guys. So now we've marked a bottom here. So 54.5K, and you're like, data, how do I know that this is the bottom? Well, you would wait a little bit. Okay, we've clearly formed this big uptrend. So you're like, okay, this is going to be the bottom. Okay, so at least this is where I'm going to start my Fibonacci retracement. Now, if you're waiting for us to form a top, well, we rejected here from this 104K level, 106, 107K, which remember, that also coincides with that trend line that we drew. Also, if you look at the indicators at the time, look at this. The RSI was overbought on the weekly. The stock RSI was overbought, crossing to the downside. So this is probably going to be a move to the downside, okay? And so at this point, you're like, well, now I have the bottom, and now I probably have the top. And so you're going to draw your Fibonacci retracement tool and say, okay, start from the bottom. And I do candle closes. You can use wicks if you want. You just got to be consistent with it. But okay. So now this is our move. We've established the big move because, again, this is the biggest retracement we've had. So it's probably going to be area of significance, indicators overbought, etc. Probably going to go a little more down. So now what you have to look for is, okay, where can I respect price to come back down to? Well, at least 0.5, because usually it does, which would be about 79K. At the time, 79K seemed like a lifetime away, right? When you're at 94K, everyone's euphoric, you're expecting price to bounce, you're like, no way we're going down to at least 79K. Well, if you had your Fibonacci retracement tool out, most likely you would have said, okay, probably is a good time to take profits, right? This is end of December, you know, we're getting close to Trump's election, maybe one more move to the upside, but I'm looking for some type of retracement further down. So let's go ahead, and then after this, you'd be looking for the golden pocket, 618 to 65. So this is a big area of significance because most big traders, whales, especially in the TradFi space, in the stock market, they look at the golden pocket. because usually price bounces off here more so than the 0.5 or 0.78 or 0.382. It's usually around here. I would say about 6 to 7 out of 10 times it'll bounce at this level, or at least reach this level. And so, okay, so now you have your orders, some at around 73K, 71K, and you also have some orders around 79K. So between 79K and around 73K, you're like, okay, I'll have some orders there. Let's see what happens. So let's go ahead and play this at 3x speed. Okay, price is going up, price is going up. Whoa, price is going back down. Now price is going back up. Okay, so at this point, you're looking at, okay, well, is this going to be invalidated, or are we going to double top? Well, let's look. Okay, look. So price rejected again. Price could not close above this 104.7K level on the weekly. So you know, okay, this downward move is still in effect. Most likely we're going to at least come down to the 0.5 level. Let's see what happens. Okay, now we have price still chopping around, and boom. Now we have the big move down. Okay, so at this point, you should be getting excited. Like, okay, good. My thesis is confirmed. We're probably going to start getting towards this 0.5 level. Also, remember what we talked about, the EMAs. Okay, we had the 50 EMA. Where's it at? The 50 EMA is between the 618 and the 0.5 level. And it's also been respected in the past. So now you're getting more confident. Remember, confluence is key. So now you're like, man, I got the 50 EMA here. It's getting close to between the 0.5 and 618 Fibonacci ratio. Okay, I'm going to start longing probably around 76K. That could be your thesis. Again, you could look at other indicators as well, RSI, stock RSI, etc. But let's see what happens. Okay, so now price is going down. Oh, it's getting a little higher. Boom. At this point, it reached the 0.5. So now we've at least longed something. And even look, it ticked below, or it ticked on this 50 EMA, which is even better. But if you were at least placing bids at 79K, you would have been filled. And you'd be happy if it just sends from here. But remember, usually it'll go to the 620 or 6.5, but it may not quite reach there. So now, let's see what happens with price. Okay, it doesn't. Oh, does it go back down? Nope, not going back down. Oh, there it goes. Okay, there. So look at this. So it nearly reached the 618, almost perfectly. It got to 74.6K. The 618 was at 73.6K, literally within 1K. 1-2%. So literally, if you were at 5x leverage and you got, at least you were DCAing, and you would have gotten an average price of around, let's say, 77K on 5x leverage. Well, now look, it basically reached the 618, and then from there, price bounced to where we are currently. So this is how the Fibonacci retracement tool is supposed to be used. You're supposed to be able to, again, somewhat predict how much price is going to retrace from its high, and then from there, in confluence with your moving averages, what was the stock RSI doing at the time when it was down here? Well, stock RSI was oversold, but it was crossing to the upside. Oh, that's a good sign. Oh, it bounced off this 50 EMA. Oh, look at this. RSI is also crossing to the upside. It's almost towards its signal line, right? There's a lot of confluence signals. You wouldn't have to just look at the Fibonacci. You could look at your moving average, your stock RSI, your MACD starting to cross to the upside again, starting to change colors. So again, a lot of indicators were signaling a shift in the trend, and that's exactly what happened. So that's Fibonacci to the upside, or I should say to the downside. Now let's look for bounces and see where you can draw those. So now, if you want to do this the opposite way, you're like, okay, data, now we had, how much we're going to trace. What about how high is it going to bounce from this move here? Well, good question. Let's go ahead and look. So now if you want to say, okay, where was the top at? Where's the local top at? Well, it was at 104.7K. That's where our Fibonacci is going to start. Now, where was the bottom? I'm assuming most people can agree it was down here at 78K. Stretch that out and look where we're at right now. We are literally within the golden pocket area. So this would be the perfect time to short, in my opinion. Again, this would probably be a good time to short. And I'm debating calling this in Gem Hunters, this Bitcoin short here, because we are in this golden pocket area for a healthy retracement. Again, we retrace this area now. Potentially we could keep going down or could chop. Now, where would we reject from if we rejected from here? Well, at least I would say 91.5K. That's the 0.5 level. But also, if you take the Fibonacci off this real quick, you can see that it's a support line. Okay, we've wicked down to it multiple times, so it's a good support level. So that's why I look for 91K. Now, below that, you have the 382 level, but it's also acting as resistance turn support. Because again, if you take off Fibonacci, look where these wicks happened. And basically, we bounced almost off of these levels, so around 88K. So you could even say between the 0.5 of 91.4K to 88K, and that roughly lines up with what our support level is in our market updates, around 90K. So I think we'll probably reject back down to 90K before bouncing higher. But that's just my opinion. Because these levels have been so significant. You can even see here, we've bounced off the golden pocket. Now we're rejecting off of it. So again, things could change, okay? I will say on the flip side, if we do break and close above this golden pocket area, say we break above 96K and close above it, at that point, I would at least target the 786 level, which is 99K. Just below 100K. That's what I would target for a rejection. Okay, so I would target between there and 105K, because obviously we could make another top and then reject from there or continue higher. But at the very least, if we close above the 618 level at like say 96K, then I would start targeting this 99K for 786, which again, we have rejected on in the past. Okay, so it's still an area of resistance. And so at that point, we may do something like that, right? And then continue higher from there. Anything's possible, but those are the two scenarios I'm looking at. I'm looking for us to reject back down, probably to 90K, continue higher, or if we break and close above, then look for us to go to about 99K, and then look for a rejection after that. So that's where the Fibonacci ratio comes into play, because literally in real time, you can see if this is going to play out, and if it is, well, you know, one of the reasons why is because it's at a major Fibonacci retracement level, the 618 to 65, also known as the golden pocket. So yeah, guys, like this stuff isn't hocus pocus. It's not magic lines. It's actually legitimate, like, yeah, there's real world use case because it gives tangible results. Because as you've seen in the past, how many times these levels have been respected. So the more times that you guys practice, the more times you can actually recognize when these patterns come into play, and the more tools you have at your disposal, so you can be more prepared and not be acting off emotion, instead acting off of data. So hopefully that helped you guys out. Now let's go ahead and look at the chat for some questions. Got about 15 minutes left. All right. Appreciate you, Brian. Appreciate you. All right, so EBK, this is John Luke. So John Luke is my name. I am not Luke Belmar. I am John Luke. Again, we have similar names, but yeah, we've definitely, Luke and I talk, and yeah, he's a great guy. But yeah, we talk similar, but we're not the same person. Mark says, Sir Data, should I buy automatically when it's on extreme fear, but price is not on support levels? No, I would not, Mark, because the key is confluence, right? Confluence is key. So you don't want to just have, you know, the fear and greed index be at max fear, but you're not, you know, it's not at a support, or your RSI, stock RSI isn't oversold, or you're not at a major moving average, or you're not at a major Fibonacci retracement level, etc. Like, there has to be at least two levels of confluence. If you want to have fear be one of those, you could, but at that point, I'd probably do three levels of confluence. Like, it's at fear, your RSI is oversold, and your stock RSI is oversold. Like, if you want to use those three, okay, that's something, right? But I would like to have it be at least at support, or at like a major Fibonacci ratio as well, because those are usually going to be more significant versus the RSI and stock RSI being oversold, because those can be oversold or overbought for long periods of time in big downtrends or uptrends, as we've seen. So let's see. Yep, Azar and Yonag got that right with bull flag. Awesome. Let's see. Debrew Jison says, yeah, BlackRock started their marketing campaign for Bitcoin ETF. Okay, cool. So yeah, so that 53K level lined up with BlackRock starting their ETF campaign. So perfect confluence there. Let's see. Mystic says, I believe you. Real for Shot says, hopefully one day we meet for sure. Hey, if any of you guys are going to be at Token 2049 in Dubai next week, go ahead and leave a fire emoji, and we'll definitely see if we can meet up. See, Debrew says, Doge looks good. Hey, there you go. Let's see. Peak Within says, thank you, John Luke. This information is unique and helpful. God bless. Hey, God bless you, Peak. Appreciate it. Muhammad says check stock RSI. So we could check the stock RSI here. So stock RSI is crossing to the upside with the RSI crossing over its signal line and the MACD looking like it wants to cross. So I don't know if this golden ratio here is going to hold. It looks like Bitcoin wants to go higher with these two, which means if they reject, it's going to be a big rejection, at least a 5K rejection. At that point, you could gain at least a 25% move on 5X leverage. So that wouldn't be bad either. But yeah, I mean, if the weekly can close, I will say this. If the weekly RSI can close above its signal line, that's going to be pretty bullish. And it has 2 days to close. And so we'll have to see what happens. But if it closes above, it's going to be pretty bullish. And we're going to go much higher, in my opinion. So we'll have to see what happens with that, especially when the MACD closes. Because look, also when you look at the MACD, look at whenever it crossed below to the downside. Look at Bitcoin. Huge downtrend. Look when it crossed to the upside. Bitcoin. Huge uptrend. Right? So MACD is definitely important, especially on higher time frames like the weekly. So make sure you guys are paying attention to these higher time frames because you're really going to see how often they do play out. Again, even though MACD is a lagging indicator, it can help you to change your bias. If you're bullish and it's crossing to the downside, then you're like, okay, maybe I need to shift my bias. Let me look at some other indicators. Let me see, are we in greed or extreme greed territory? Well, yeah, this makes sense then, cross to the downside. The RSI also crossed below its signal line, so you had a lot of confluence there. All right. Let's see. Azar says, is there another bull flag forming on the weekly? Let's see. Let's draw it. I'm going to go ahead and delete this Fibonacci. I really want to keep it, but we have this video for proof, so if it ends up rejecting here, we know why. He was asking if this was another bull flag. Let's see. Well, we do have the pole, right? We do have that. That's a good sign. But do we have the flag? So let's go ahead and look at the parallel channel here. Maybe. Maybe. I don't want to say for sure, but maybe. Because you have the flag, or you have the pole here, then you have a downtrend. Now, what I would love to see if you know, it had a little bit more trend line support, if like it came down here and then went back up and then came back down, down, up, right? That'd be a little bit better. It's like a little bit more extended. But yeah, I mean, technically you could say this is a bull flag. Therefore, if this breaks above, you look for it to retest support and then continue higher like that. That would be a nice little bull flag breakout there. So technically, yeah, it may be a bull flag. Again, it's not as clean cut as what we had last time. Remember where we had this here, right? We had this little bull flag here where you can see what I mean about, you know, bounced off of here, bounced, bounce. Like clearly, it looks much prettier than this, where you have like this big gap here and then it bounced a couple times. And so it's kind of a stretch calling this a bull flag, but you may be able to get away with it. So again, appreciate you, Brian. Azar says, what do you think about ton call? Should we buy now or wait for a retracement? Let's go and look at ton. Okay, so if we look on the weekly, and let's just go ahead and delete all the drawing here. Let's just draw it from scratch. All right, so. Okay, so ton had a good bounce here at 280. Now, let's actually go on the daily. Dial it down a little bit. Okay, so we do have some resistance between this level here, and then maybe there could be some resistance at 342. Okay, so what I would look at is this daily 50 EMA. The only thing I would say is we've had resistance, pretty choppy around this area. I mean, it did act as support here, so that's something. But now, could this be resistance again, right? That's the only thing I'd be concerned about. And let's go ahead and do it one step further. The daily stock RSI is overbought which isn't good. If we could look at the weekly, weekly still has some room to run. The RSI is actually crossing above the signal line, so weekly is not too bad. Weekly looks better than the daily. The daily, you have the stock RSI overbought, and you have it at a 50 EMA, or close to it, at about 330. And so what I would look for is, I mean, at least you have the MACD crossing to the upside, which is a good sign. Could show a shift in the trend here. So last time it crossed to the upside, you had ton go from, I mean, what, this 276 all the way up to all the way up to 413. So that was a, let's just see what kind of move that was. That was a 52% move. If we extrapolate this out to what we have right now, and we're looking for when it crossed, well, if we're conservative, we'll just start from this candle. 52% move would be 440. So that'd probably be your measured move if you were doing apples to apples, more or less. The RSI did bounce off of its signal line, which is good. But yeah, this stock RSI is the only thing that worries me, and being at this 50 EMA resistance. And so I would just say use caution whenever you are, if you're trading ton right now, is just look at these levels. And if it can break and close above this 50 EMA, you know, let's just say it can break and close above 335, 340. That could be pretty bullish, especially if it can close above this resistance at 342. If it closes at like 350, let's just say, if it closes at 350, man, we're going a lot higher. But obviously we have 25 cents in between there, so you'd miss most of the move if you waited too long there. But if you're waiting for confirmation and keeping it safe, maybe 350 is the way to go, or at the very least 335. But yeah, that would be my only thing with that. But at least the MACD has crossed over, so yeah, so it's like a 50-50 right now. Again, I know it's, I hate being indecisive like that, but it's not one clear move. Like it's not saying ton is bearish or ton is bullish. I'm just kind of indifferent now. So at least the weekly looks bullish. So long term, it should still be a good play. Let's see. Mystic Eve, how do you feel about Bollinger Bands? Bollinger Bands, I like them. Just the only thing to keep in mind with Bollinger Bands is if price crosses below a Bollinger Band, it can remain below it for a certain period of time. So for example, let me just go over that real quick. So for example, with ton. Okay, so I'm gonna remove a couple of these indicators here, and let's actually just delete all the drawings. Okay, so for example, if you have price crossing below this Bollinger Band like it did on ton, well, it still kept going down from 407 down to 367, sideways, kept going down, it crossed below it, still kept going down, and finally it bottomed out at 250. And so if you would have been buying at this Bollinger Band, I mean, I would have been looking at the indicators. RSI and stock RSI were both oversold. So even though all these indicators were oversold, price still kept going lower. Okay, so that's why Bollinger Bands, they're okay. I mean, you can see they've caught some moves here. Nice little move here, nice little move here, here, and then, yeah, even down here, October, right? So I would say they work more than they don't, but just don't use them as an end-all be-all buy or sell indicator. Use them in confluence and really at major support or resistance levels is what I would say with that. So, for example, if you can, we need to look at a different ton chart, but if, like, for example, if this was at major support here, then yeah, that'd probably be a good level to buy and it probably would have bounced. But if not, then it's a little bit riskier. So that'd be the only thing. Just Bollinger Bands can work, but just know their strengths and weaknesses. All right. Corpus says, great video once again. I've been making some good profits, so nearly able to buy Gym Runners Premium. Corpus, that's amazing. That's amazing. That's congrats too on making the profits. Really happy for you. For anyone who has questions about Gym Hunters Premium, it is our premium group where in Gym Hunters Free, in the free Telegram, if you haven't joined it, you can join in the description below. But Gym Hunters Premium, it's like an amplified version of Gym Hunters Free, and it's in Discord. So Gym Hunters Premium will have 40 plus calls, including DGen calls, like meme coin calls. We'll have Gym Alpha calls. We'll have leverage calls, and this is per month, 40 per month. We'll have live streams daily. We'll have 24/7 concierge service. We'll have gym reports, more gym reports, and you can also talk with the gym hunters more direct versus in the free Telegram. So there's a lot more benefits, and you get a lot more access to a lot of good info versus the free group. Again, the free group, you still get great info, but you get an abundance of it in the Gym Hunters Premium. Gym Hunters Premium is 1 ETH right now, which is, I believe, about 1,700 plus or minus, which is a 50% discount from last year when people were paying $3,500. So again, it's at a steep discount. The market's looking good. ETH is looking good. It's about to break some downtrends. And so ETH could be a lot higher. So definitely make sure you guys are taking that into consideration if you're thinking of joining Gym Hunters Premium. And if you want to join it, click the link in the description and you can join it there. Also, we have more members, like a members area where we have content such as like a full crypto masterclass and a lot of other guides that can help you in your trading journey. So definitely a lot of good benefits to joining. Let's see. Muhammad says GMX for BloFin. BloFin all the way, Muhammad. BloFin is non-KYC. Gym Hunters backs it fully. Join in our description if you haven't. The Gym Hunters referral link there. Much appreciated. But yeah, we use BloFin at Gym Hunters because, again, they're non-KYC. If you have any issues signing up, I know some people have used a VPN, like NordVPN or others. Very easy there. And then also, they spend a lot of their money on regulation and compliance. I spoke with the CEO in Singapore, and he told me directly, he's like, we don't put up if there's any bad actors, if there's any suspicious wallets, we ban their account right away. They don't deal with that, even and could because they want to keep their non-KYC status, because all these other leverage trading exchanges like Bybit, Binance, Mexi, Gate.io, all of them require your ID to trade on there. Not BloFin. BloFin literally just sign up, email, password, Google Authenticator, you're good to go. So highly recommend it. The nerdy guy says, at what point should I long ton now? Let's go ahead and take off these Bollinger Bands. Let's see. I will say this, for Bollinger Bands, usually when you have a constriction like this and it's breaking to the upside, usually that move continues. Like, usually keeps going. So I will caveat it with that. These Bollinger Bands are kind of good for identifying those high volatility areas and constrictions. But as far as where to buy ton, I mean, if you want to be safe, honestly, if you can get in near 280, that'd be like the best level to buy. Between 260 to 280. All right. EBK says, me go long BTC. Risky play, EBK. Risky play, but hope it works out for you. Cody says, how to withdraw my crypto token to fiat currency in BloFin. So what you can do, Cody, if you have another account, like another exchange you're on, like Coinbase, Kraken, Binance, Binance US, etc., you can just withdraw it to there and then withdraw it to your bank. But if you're trying to do it like non-KYC, I know that you can use Sol CC. So like Sol Card is something I've used. So for example, let me go ahead and go over that real quick. So yeah, so Sol Card here, Sol Card CC, it's a Solana debit card where you can actually deposit Solana onto a credit card, and you can actually connect this credit card to like your Apple Pay account. And then you just deposit Solana, they take a 5% fee, and you can use that card wherever. You can't use it on gas stations or Uber rides, but everywhere else you can use it. So again, it's like an Apple Pay card, you can connect it there. So, or Google Pay, I think. But yeah, Gym Hunters does not endorse Sol Card. This is just from crypto data, but it is something I've been using for the past, gosh, I don't know, 4 to 6 months plus. So it's a great area there. El Guaje says, yeah, ton. What do you think about the bottom will be this weekend and before the token 2049 event? It's interesting because some good traders, like there's two good traders I know. One of them is saying we're going to pump on the weekend, and one of them is saying we're going to dump. And so it's going to determine how we close the weekly candle, to be honest, or at least the daily. But the weekly on Sunday is going to determine a lot. And so just watch for that. But for ton, I would say the bottom, maybe 280. Maybe 280 would be the bottom here. If not 280, if you're looking for like a little bit level higher, I would say, I don't even want to give you, maybe 315. No, that's too close. Probably say 290. 280 to 290 is probably going to be a bottom for ton if we do bottom out. But if this thing keeps going and it crosses and closes above the 50 EMA on the daily, then all bets are off, and we're probably going to at least Probably at least 390-ish, I would say. Viper says a higher time frame is more significant. However, can we still use, let's say, Fibonacci for daily candles? Yeah, of course. Yeah, so you can use Fibonacci for any time frame. Just know that it's probably going to be more significant on the higher time frames, but at the same token, no pun intended, it's going to take more time to play out. And so, yeah, you can definitely use it on the daily, 100%, 100%. I just meant like most likely if you have a Fibonacci on the weekly, it's probably going to retrace back eventually, even though the daily can still, you know, chop around and go higher, but just use the weekly as kind of a gauge of if you should be net bullish or net bearish, and then you can kind of go down and find your little mini bounces or mini retracements on the daily. Oh, Debrew, fire emoji. So it looks like he's going to be in token 2049. Look forward to seeing you there, man. Pollo Loco says, how much longer do you think this bull run will last? Like 2-ish months? You know, I think probably October, November, because based off the standard 4-year cycle, usually we'll have 2 years of bear, 2 years of bull. So usually the bull market technically started in October 2023. So I would say October 2025 this year would be around the top. But again, a big caveat with that, the government could start buying for their strategic Bitcoin reserve via tariff savings or gold certificates, which one of the top people in their crypto council, Bo Hines, he's actually even said that. He's like, yeah, we're exploring new avenues to purchase Bitcoin because, again, they're looking for a delta neutral strategy. That's what Trump mentioned whenever they were talking about buying more Bitcoin for their SBR, whether that's tariff savings, whether that's gold certificates, whether that's other countries paying us, you know, who knows what it's going to be. But the matter of the fact is, if that's a catalyst that happens in like October, November, then there's no telling how long the bull cycle could last. We could go to January, February of next year. So again, but I would say probably by October, November. That if you want to be on the safe side. But for me, Bitcoin's probably going to top out between 115 to 150K, just because that trend line resistance I drew from 2017, which is around 115 in October. So that's what I would look at. Sam says record amount of retail buyers got into the S&P in the last dump to 480. You think the market will pressure them by dropping all stocks again? You know, that's a good point, Sam. So usually retail is the last to get in, right? They're FOMOing at the top or they're selling at the bottom. And so with that said, yeah, market makers could very much shake them out. And again, if they're longing at the very end, the market makers could punish them by bringing the price down and then piling on the shorts. And at that point, longs get liquidated, the shorts get confident, and then it reverses and we go, you know, the cycle repeats. So yeah, I think it's very possible. And there's actually some websites you can look at that shows you what the smart traders are doing. And so if you follow the smart wallets and like the top wallets as far as profit and loss, you can actually see what they're doing if majority are longing or majority are shorting, and that can help you formulating your thesis. Curious Wonder says, can you give an update about Sol? Thanks. Yeah, we'll go ahead and check it out real quick. Again, 11:03, so I'm gonna have to go here very soon, but I'll just answer the last questions that we have. There's a few more, but I'll get those answered, and then we will end the stream. So Solana, let's go ahead and take off the BB. Okay, so Solana, some big resistance near about 155. As you can see, actually, I think it's on the weekly. Did I draw this? It's 155 level. Let me see where I drew this at. Yeah, I think it was some area of significance. I think 155 to 160, because like where we bounced here in the past, I think that was a level I was looking at, which we nearly tapped it here. So I'll draw that. Okay, yeah. So this 155 to 160 level is a big area. As far as where we're going to go from here, I mean, you can even look at Solana and this 50 EMA. When it crossed above it, we're starting a new uptrend. I would say 136 to 138, good level to buy for Solana if you want to retest that support. So that'd be a very good confluence area. But right now, if we're looking at the daily chart, stock RSI is crossing to the downside, does not look too good, but the RSI still has some room to run. So again, kind of indecisive on that front, and then MACD is still crossing to the upside. So yeah, Solana's kind of in the middle right now. If you're looking to buy something, I would buy near 146. That could be a good support. And then if you want to buy further, we have midterm support here around 140. And so you can see this resistance hopefully turn support. Indicators will give a chance to reset and then go from there. If you look at the weekly though, Weekly is very bullish because this RSI is actually crossing above its signal line. If the RSI can cross above the signal line on the weekly, very, very bullish. And then I could see Solana going a lot higher. That's where I start targeting that 170 all the way up to 185 level. So those would be my next targets. MACD is also looking like it wants to cross over. Stock RSI is crossing up from the downside. So yeah, weekly is mega bullish for most altcoins. If you look at most altcoins, the weekly, it's going to look like this. So I would say just keep that in mind. If you're trying to, you know, buy or sell. The daily, you may see some short-term downside, but then eventually you'll see a higher because we did cross above this trend line. Or moving average, I should say. Hey, brother, do you know Professor Adam from TRW, The Real World? Taught me all I know, and your lessons are both great. I do not know him, but that's awesome. If you're, you know, wherever you can learn some good information, awesome, good for you. We try to provide as much value here at Gym Hunters and provide you guys with non-biased data. Again, strictly the data, and we take emotions out of it, so you guys are getting the best info possible. El Guaje says, do you think Token 2049 will affect the market upwards? You know, funny story is a lot of times during conferences, those conferences will mark the top. Like, we'll have a pullback during the conference. It's happened, I think, on ETH Denver. It's happened, I think, on some Bitcoin conferences, on Token 2049. And I think it's a combination of everyone being away from their computer. So it's much easier to manipulate the price. And people are so euphoric that they're probably expecting price to rise. And so that basically makes them susceptible to downward price momentum. And so, yeah, I think during the conference, we probably will have a pullback, most likely. Twinkle says, what's your criteria for scalping 15 minutes to an hour? You know, I don't really scalp the low time frames, to be honest, but my criteria would be if it's at some good support and the RSI and stock RSI are oversold or overbought, you know, depending. But yeah, like, I like to do a lot of confluence for lower time frames. Muhammad says, do you trust RSI overbought, oversold more than when they align with the key fib, like the 618? Ooh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I would probably trust the RSI more just because more people look at that. So it's more so like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah, I'd probably trust the RSI more. And plus, it's a little bit less subjective. The Fibonacci retracement, some people choose their tops and bottoms differently. Therefore, you may not have a right 618 or may not be the perfect one. So yeah, RSI is a little bit more, for lack of a better word, dummy proof. Jay says, can you do TA on Jasmine Coin? Jay loves Jasmine Coin. I think he's asked me about Jasmine Coin every stream. That's pretty funny. But I don't mind it, Jay. We'll check out Jasmine Coin. Let's see. Not too bad. But let me see. And guys, if you haven't liked the video, please like the video. It helps us keep this content for free and continue to give you guys the best quality content, especially for these hour live streams. So please like the video, share it around. Really helps us out. Also, if you haven't signed up for our BloFin, with our BloFin referral link, please do so as well. Helps us a lot to give you guys free trades in the group. Now, as far as Jasmine, it's looking like, I mean, I wouldn't really buy it here. It's in the middle of a range again, and it's getting close to overbought. So if you're going to short it, or take profit, I'll take profit around 2 cents. If you're going to long it, I would at least wait till 1.6 cents to long. So other than that, pretty risky in my opinion. And then the major support obviously is going to be 0.008. If you want a little more intermediate support, you can look at 1.3 cents. So that would be my analysis on Jasmine. But yeah, RSI is getting close to overbought. Stock RSI is already overbought. Potentially, we even have a bearish divergence on the stock RSI, where you're making a potential lower high while price is making a higher high. So a little bearish divergence there. So just keep that in mind. Peak, do you have a subscription on TradingView and do you recommend it? I do have a subscription on TradingView, Peak. I have the premium. I recommend if you can get it during Black Friday. I think it's 60% off, so it's a good deal there. But I just use a lot of indicators. You may be good with Premium Plus. I think that's like the midterm plan where I think you can have 10 indicators. So that should be more than enough for you. You shouldn't need more than that. Stock RSI, RSI, MACD, it's a couple moving averages and maybe one or two more. But I also code indicators, so I need to have like 15, 20 indicators available. So for calculation purposes. So yeah, that's the only difference, just depending. Azar says, what do you think about Tau? I see it just at the 200-day EMA on the daily as support. It could be good. We'll go over it in a sec. For Shad, in case of a device could be exposed, how can I save it? In case of a device could be exposed, how can I save it? Not sure what you mean by that, for Shad. Rodrigo, what coins are you most bullish on for the shorter term, like a few weeks? You know, if ETH can cross its downtrend, probably Ethereum, funny enough. And then Sui, I'm definitely most bullish on Sui right now because they have their conference next week and supposed to be some big announcements. So probably Sui, maybe Ethereum, and then yeah, probably Hype, and maybe Solana on those. Sam says tax return season 2. Yeah, so for the United States, April 15th was the deadline. So that's the majority of the volatility from that. Now, of course, they have an extended deadline, which is October 15th. But yeah, also something to keep in mind. Nuts, can you take a look at Brett? Maybe we could watch Hype. Thanks in advance. Thanks. And what's your go-to move when the RSI breaks out and price rejects off the fib level? Ooh, that's a good question. RSI breaks out and price rejects off the fib level. I mean, at that point, I just have to watch the fib because the fib's probably going to overtake it at that point because it has, you know, the fib level has been validated, which at that time, then that's stronger than the RSI. What indicator is the green line? It is the 50 EMA. If the last circle was about alts, next big thing was DeFi tokens. What's the next big thing could be born? I think AI summer. We have some AI coins start pumping again. And then RWA may catch on again because BlackRock's going to do that. And then it says, Francine, how do you filter for cryptocurrencies for watch listing? You can, I mean, there's a watch list on the right here. You can actually favorite your indicators and add that. Let's see. El Guaje says, I made a bet with my friend, trusting Luke's bullish post that if Sol is over 141, May 21st, I win 1 Sol. If it's under, he gets it. Do you think we have a chance to win? May 21st? Maybe. You may have a chance to win. I think we're probably going to top out mid-May, so it's going to be close. Use says, do you have any projects in crypto that you like without a trading point of view? Projects in crypto that you like without a... I mean, I like crypto podcasts and stuff. Projects in crypto without a trading point of view. Not sure if I have any, to be honest. Muhammad says, how do you reconcile RSI divergence when prices breaking through Fibonacci with strong volume? Do you trust momentum or structure more? At that point, I would trust momentum versus the Fibonacci if it's breaking through it. And then I would go to the next Fibonacci for a resistance level. It's like the 786 or what have you. EBK says, thank you, bro. Will you be hosting next live? Yeah, I'll probably host another live in about 12 hours or so. So look for that. Jay says, if BTC ends up going to 90K, do you think memes will follow like Popcat and Pengu? I think Popcat, yes. Pengu, it just didn't have the best strength during the last run. So that's why I'm a little hesitant on Pengu. If Abstract can continue higher, like if the Abstract chain catches on, which is technically like the Pengu chain, then Pengu could bounce, but I need to look at the chart to see. But yeah, I'll go over 2 coins, and then that's going to end the stream, guys. So I'll go over, I said I would go over, which one was it? Tau, and then Hype. Okay, I'll go over Tau, Hype, and Brett real quick, then we got to end the stream. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. Definitely like the video if you liked it. Really, really appreciate it. For Tau, it could be at, I was going to say it could be a good support, but the only thing is the RSI is a little bit iffy right now. So RSI is overbought and the stock RSI is overbought. So potentially we got to move to the downside. I would watch the daily candle. If it closes below this 350 level, then probably look to short it. And I would short it at least to 330, then to 316. Those would be the 2 levels I'd look at. And if it bounces from here, if the candle closes green, potentially we could have a run. I mean, heck, all the way to 415. It's possible. Or at the very least, probably 390. But yeah, I'll probably look at 390 as your first take profit, and then 415 as the next. If it crosses below, look to maybe long your 330 and 315. And then looking at Brett real quick. Okay, so Brett did cross above his 50 EMA. Very bullish there. I know that Luke actually called Brett, or at least he was talking about it. So, again, Luke is very good with trading, guys. Like, he knows a lot of stuff. So, make sure you pay attention when he talks. We are coming up against some resistance for Brett. RSI, stock RSI overbought. Like, there's a lot of overbought indicators on the daily. Now, granted, we can keep going because in uptrends, as I mentioned, daily candles, or I should say daily indicators can stay overbought for a while. But yeah, if Brett closes above 6.5 cents, could be pretty bullish. And the next thing I would target would be at a minimum midterm resistance near 7.2, and then longer would be 8.3. And then if it rejects here, I would look to long at, let's see, you could long at, what is it? Oh, wait, here it is. Okay. You could long at 5.8 cents and then 5.2 cents. So those would be my levels. But yeah, it's daily candle close is going to tell us a lot because these are overbought, so just be careful. And then finally, last but not least, is going to be, what was it? Hype. Okay, so Hype, again, is another one where pretty bullish on that. If my chart wants to load, Hype US. Here we go. Okay, so a lot here. Again, this resistance turns support for this green here. Let's change this. So good support between $18. I see around 18. And then further support is going to be around, call it 17. So $18 and 17, or I would look to long. I mean, the RSI is getting close. Again, the RSI almost resets here on the signal line, so it could be used as support. So if you can get along at $18, maybe good risk reward. And then if it crosses below that, $17.50 and then $17. So around this whole area. And then I'd look for targets at around $20. 19 to 20. Be good levels. But cool. All right, guys. And Van, no, this isn't Luke. This is John Luke. So a different person. We sound the same, talk the same, but we are different people. Crypto Data is my alias. If you're not following me on X, definitely do so. I post a lot of good content for you guys and try to keep you guys updated. Also, join the free group if you haven't. In the description, if you want to join Premium, it's 1 Ethereum. You can get a lot more trades, a lot more access. And then last but not least, if you aren't signed up for BloFin, please sign up. It's in the description. Helps us keep these streams going for free. And please like the video if you liked it. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for contributing your time. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Till next time.